For the first session of today, I'd like to introduce Qualys' very own President and CEO, Sumedh Thakar, who will be addressing the need to balance security risk with operational risk and the need for new approaches to risk mitigation. Sumedh, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Graham. That's going to be tough to match Graham's energy, but welcome all of you to our latest edition of Cyber Risk Series. What started as a way for us to talk about the basic hygiene in cybersecurity. You know, there's a lot of conversations that vendors have about the one magic silver bullet, but we all know that the most basic hygiene from cybersecurity perspective has the biggest impact. And so last quarter, we had a conversation about navigating the broken CMDB. And this is an issue that every single organization, no matter what size they are, has a challenge with. And we had an overwhelming response. Over 3,000 people signed up for that particular conversation and lots of positive feedback. And we hope that that helped a few organizations really improve their cyber asset management capabilities. So this time we decided to pick the other spectrum of cybersecurity hygiene, which is really the ability to patch. And patching, as all of you know, really is a challenge for many organizations because of the balance between operational impact and security impact. And this is really where Shakespeare many years ago came up with this poem, which almost seems like it's apt for patch management, which is about, you know, to be or not to be is the question. And in fact, the first line of that poem really says, is it nobler to suffer in the mind or to take up arms against the sea of patches, is probably what he meant. And this really describes the challenge that a lot of people face with cybersecurity patch management. And one thing that is absolutely clear is that you can do all the things in cybersecurity in terms of measuring and prioritizing, but if you don't actually fix the issue before an attacker gets to it, you have wasted all that effort. And so when you look at the 4 pillars in cybersecurity risk management, the most important pillar on the left-hand side, which is called the step 0 of cybersecurity, is knowing your assets. After that, you need to be able to detect all of the issues, vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, etc., that you have across all of your assets. The third part and the third pillar, which is really about being able to prioritize what truly is important from a threat intelligence perspective, what truly is important from the business perspective, so that you can focus on fixing those specific issues. And that's really where the challenge begins, because while cybersecurity folks are the ones focusing on measuring, a lot of times when there is an actual issue and a breach, the cybersecurity people get called in, when in reality, in most organizations, cybersecurity teams do not have the mandate to do the actual fixing of the issue. And as we discussed, the only thing that really matters in cybersecurity is, did you actually fix it on time or not? And so the most important part of cyber, which is fixing things, a lot of times organizations say, oh, that's not my domain, that's something that IT needs to do. And when there is an issue, it's the CISO that has to go face the board, that has to go face the media, that has to go face SEC, etc. So when you're the one going and facing when issue comes up, but you have absolutely no purview on actually making an impact, that really creates the friction between security and IT teams, because the IT teams are getting overwhelmed with a lot of things that they need to do, but the security teams need them to do the patching. And the challenge that always comes up is, how do you balance the operational impact and the operational risk of deploying patches with the impact of not deploying the patches and causing security risk. So this balance between operational risk and security risk is always at the heart of the tussle that we see in being able to do patching and other forms of mitigation for those particular issues. One of the things that we have seen happen quite a bit is IT teams are getting overwhelmed because the number of vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that are being discovered is so high that they're constantly being inundated with tickets of having to fix something or the other all the time. Now, the basic physics of the whole equation is that the more number of issues that you have to fix, the more number of patches you need to deploy to fix those issues. And the more number of patches you deploy, the higher the risk of something breaking from an operational perspective. So when you think about it like that, the best way to reduce your operational impact from patching something is to deploy the minimal number of patches that are required to fix the particular issue from a cyber perspective, which means to be able to do that, the prioritization of which issues really are going to cause a problem for your organization need to be at the forefront. And this is where our Qualys VMDR TrueRisk has actually helped a lot of organizations not to have to go and fix 10,000 vulnerabilities, which might mean that you have to deploy 500 patches, and 500 patches means a lot more risk from an operational perspective. If you are really able to narrow this down to say, from the threat intelligence that I have and based on the TrueRisk score, I really need to focus on fixing 50 issues. 50 issues can really translate only to about maybe 2 or 3 patches. Now, 2 or 3 patches on a system to balance security and operations is a much more palatable approach and much better way to look at how you can reduce the risk by actually fixing the issues and not creating this plethora of options and plethora of patches that you need to deploy. I would say one great example of this is when we did the research around the 3 billion vulnerability detections that Qualys does on our platform in the last 12 months or so. We discovered that only about 20% of CVS's high-end critical vulnerabilities actually, from a customer detection perspective, only about 20% actually were prioritized by TrueRisk, which means those were the only ones that actually had a risk from somebody being able to compromise, where there was a POC, it was an exploitable vulnerability, it was a possible privilege escalation or lateral movement vulnerability. 80% of the findings actually did not have a way to compromise those. And if the IT teams were prioritizing based on CVS's high-end critical, that means that 80% of the work that they were doing was not helping in any way to reduce the risk of the organization in the more immediate term. So that's like if your IT team took 5 days to fix everything that's marked high-end critical, they wasted 4 days in fixing things that made no impact to the risk of the particular organization. And so this is really one of the big challenges, and the approaches that everybody needs to take is, how do you reduce the number of patches that need to be deployed? And this is where we're pretty excited. About 5 years ago, and we were quite visionary at the time, to come up with this notion of being able to leverage the vulnerability management solution, which is detecting your issue, to also be able to patch that particular issue. And of course, this was a very new paradigm and very disruptive in the industry. Nobody else was doing that. So there was, of course, a lot of pushback. However, the need for cybersecurity teams to have some form of cybersecurity patch management has been so grave, given the huge gap that they see between the detection and the actual patching happening, that we were pleasantly surprised to see that in the last 12 months, Qualys agents across our entire customer base has deployed more than 50 million patches in just 12 months. So this is security teams collaborating with their IT teams to come up with a way to leverage Qualys patch management so that you can go and patch the most critical, the vulnerabilities that have the most impact on you, to be able to patch them quickly in a very short period of time. That doesn't mean that we're doing all the patching that the IT team needs to do, but really taking that effort out of mapping the CVEs into the actual patches and then deploying the patch. If you look at it from a technology perspective, when the Qualys agent detects a particular vulnerability, we can technically fix it in 4 hours maximum by immediately downloading the patch and fixing it. However, the internal process of the organization can take 2 weeks because of approvals, and some people want to test even on laptops with Chrome. So there's a lot of exposure. So you now have an exposure of 2 weeks to that particular vulnerability instead of an exposure that could possibly only for 4 hours, as an example. And so with that success that we had, it has been very encouraging to see some of the world's largest organizations are extremely engaged with us in terms of us actually helping them deploy those patches, to do the mapping of the CVE to the exact patch file for, say, Japanese Windows 11, as an example. And reducing the frustration that comes when you hand over the IT team a CVE report. They go look up on Google, find some patches, deploy the patches, only for the scanner to come back, scan again, and find out that that patch actually did not fix the particular issue because they patched a slightly different patch than what was required to fix the particular issue. And then everybody's frustrated. And so after the kind of amazing success that we have seen with customers really focusing on leveraging patch management as much as they can, it still, of course, doesn't take away from the inherent risk that patching brings when you actually have to deploy a whole patch. And sometimes, and while patch management is the ideal solution to fix your issue, we do see that there are times when actually deploying a full patch is really just not feasible. And because of multiple operational issues, it really comes down to the operational issues. And so when the patching is not feasible, customers really still need to reduce the risk of that particular issue. They want to mitigate the exploit from happening. They want to make sure that they don't leave the door open for the attackers just because they are having an operational issue with getting a patch going. And so after a lot of feedback from our customers and working closely with some of our design partners, I am super excited today to announce our Qualys' True Risk Eliminate platform. This platform gives our customers multiple abilities to mitigate the risk coming from vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that attackers can exploit. So True Risk Eliminate has of course, True Risk Patch, which is patch management. And now we're introducing two additional capabilities. One is True Risk Mitigate, is the ability to deploy configuration updates onto devices that can mitigate the possibility of that exploit without actually having to deploy the patch. And today we have very, very strong coverage for almost all of the most recent CISA KEV, which is the known exploitable vulnerability list that CISA provides. We have almost full coverage of those, whether it's a agent, whether it's a scanner. We can really take very targeted surgical actions on a device to make it impossible for an attacker to actually execute the chain of attack by sometimes maybe just changing the permission on the file, sometimes a registry key change, sometimes it's just disabling a cipher or some other config that you can do. And the vendors typically do provide a lot of these workarounds, but it is very hard for customers to go and keep track of all of these different workarounds. And so True Risk Mitigate is exciting, and Iran will go into the details of explaining that as well as give you a demo towards the end of this particular session. So I definitely encourage you guys to try and attend that so that you can see what capabilities this brings. And then the third part is, look, if you can't patch it, try to mitigate it, and if you cannot mitigate it, then isolate it. And so we are hearing a lot of customers that are saying sometimes from a compliance perspective, the risks are so high of leaving an exploitable vulnerability in critical infrastructure that they would rather take some drastic action at times, which would include isolating the device from the network and not allowing it back into critical network till the particular issue is resolved and the patch is deployed. And so with True Risk Eliminate now, we are providing the ability to patch, mitigate, and isolate devices. So you have multiple options in terms of reducing the risk. The goal is not necessarily patch management, right? The goal is not patching. The goal from a security team perspective is to reduce the possibility of an exploit, to reduce the risk. And with a comprehensive set of capabilities that we are launching today, I'm pretty excited to get feedback from all of you. Please attend Iran's session, look at the various capabilities that we are providing and how easy we are making it to operationalize the ability to not only patch the asset, but as an option to also mitigate the particular vulnerability. And this is important when you have a 0-day. A 0-day does not have a patch at times, but you still need to rapidly deploy some fixes on the asset so that the attackers cannot exploit just because there is no patch. And so wrapping it all into a single workflow, in a single console, in a single UI, and checking if the mitigation is in place so that you can provide the appropriate view of your overall risk to your auditors, to your board, to your management becomes extremely easy with Qualys. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for attending this session. We're very excited about this new innovation that we're disrupting the market again. So please give it a try, give us feedback, and we're going to continue to really work on our mission, which is really to help you eliminate risk and not just measure risk. So thank you very much, and I look forward to getting feedback from you.